these prophetic words after she's been murdered, and of course, there's a whole allegory of, again, panic masculinity. He can't take the release of orgasm; it's too much for him, so he has to kill her. We saw how misogynistic he is. This has to do with his being idealistic and ascetic and talking in kind of noble paraphrases all the time. The film leaves a real problem. Her attraction to him. Why does she want him so badly, given her explicit ideology? And that's part of the tension of the film. So, again, I think the film is proposing a kind of utopian communism, but in a very oblique way, and one which got Makavejev kicked. I mean, basically, after this film was made, it was banned in Yugoslavia. He was kicked out of the Communist Party and advised privately that he'd be much better off if he left the country and never came back again. And in fact, he did leave, didn't come back until after '89. And anyway, so I could talk more about that at a bit more time. I have very little time, so I should probably just say something very briefly about Life and Death of a Porno Gang. I don't think I have time to show the thing. I'll just go through this super quickly, which is unfortunate, but as I said at the beginning, not too much. Life and Death of a Porno Gang is a recent film by it's the first feature film, but he's made some shorts by Mladen Djordjevic, a young Serbian director. And it's about a young film neighbor named Marko, played by an actor, not by the director himself, who, at the start of the film, he's doing his kind of he's doing sort of a film diary. He talks about how he's trying to make his first feature, and he doesn't have, he finds it very hard to do so. Money's tight. There's not any way to make it. So we start out with just a young filmmaker who's aesthetically ambitious, he's graduated from film school, but he can't get funding to make his movie. He ends up by going to, there's only one way to get a movie to make a film. He goes to the Porno King of Belgrade and starts working for him, shooting porno features, and then he's given a little money to make his own porno film. When he makes it, he gets in trouble, however, because it's not just a porno film, it's a kind of pornographic horror, zombie, political allegory film, the porno director hates him for being too arty. So he decides the porno king wants the money back and he can't pay him. He said, so therefore he's blocked from making films. He gets up together some other actors and starts at a porno troupe, kind of cabaret. He starts a porno cabaret and has performances in Belgrade. But then it's disrupted by the porno king and his brother, who's a corrupt cop, who basically break up, beat him up, close down the performance, kick out the audience, beat him up, and demand their money back, which he doesn't have. So he decides he has to flee Belgrade. So he flees Belgrade, where the urban sophisticates are, and takes the porno troupe out in the country on this bus. And so it's a kind of 60s reminiscent hippie bus. It's kind of very idealistic. They kind of have a community, and they decide to educate rural Serbia in sexuality. So there's a kind of way in which they start doing this kind of porno cabaret thing on the road. They do all these kinds of weird and hilarious and transgressive things. There's a real sense of kind of utopian community. There's one scene where they all take psychedelic mushrooms and are tripping out in the forest. There are other scenes in which they all have their own different sexual predilections, and they're not all the same. They're all very different, but despite certain tensions and jealousies for sexual reasons, they get along pretty well, and it becomes kind of an alternative utopian community. But it quickly collapses because they start being harassed. Rural Serbia doesn't want them. The men of all the villages come and tell them that their stuff is disgusting. Basically, it's transgressing patriarchal order, so they get beaten up by the cops and eventually raped by a group of angry Serbian peasants. They're in trouble. They have no money. Nobody will come to see the things. They're always being kicked out of one county after another. To give a sense of the humor of the humor of the film, there's a scene where all the members of the porno gang, men and women, are lined up in a row and being raped by the Serbian peasants, and it's quite horrific. But then one of the members of the troupe, a gay guy who's HIV positive, just starts laughing, and it's sort of we infer the quote is that these righteous patriarchal peasants are going to get HIV themselves because what they're doing to me, and I mean it's just. The movie is filled with sort of wonderful moments of dislocation like that, but there's a downward trajectory. What eventually happens is that they're approached, and here's the clip I was going to show you, but I'll skip it because we obviously don't have time. They're approached by a German guy who speaks Serbian. He explains he's an entrepreneur from Germany who came as a reporter to Serbia during the war. And he stayed afterwards because there's so many economic possibilities in post-war Serbia. what the opportunities are, he explains, are snuff films. He shows he shows Marco, the head of the band, just films taken from the war of people being brutally raped and killed, and he says there's this Western audience, these Americans and Germans who will pay lots of money to see snuff films. So I have a proposition for you: make snuff films for me, and you'll make lots of money. Your economic woes will be over. He says, don't worry about the law, because number one, I have the cops in my pocket. They're I have ties to the state. They're not going to arrest you. Number two, you're only going to kill. There's no moral problem because you're only going to kill people who want to die. And so they're very disturbed by this, but there's such economic traits they decide or agree to. They decide to agree to get it. So they have these kind of ritualistic killings of people who want to die and who say that when they die, money will be paid not to their families. So the first one is a soldier who wants to confess about the horrors he committed during the war, and then he said, kill me and my family get all this money from the German guy. And that does happen. They have a kind of, they draw straws to who will kill him, and they have these, again, it's very hard to watch because they have this on-screen, of course it's not really happening in the real world, but within the diegesis they have scenes of people being killed to make snuff films. Eventually the result of this is just everything goes downhill. They trek through Serbia, which becomes increasingly surreal. Here's one scene where they come to the house of one of the people who's volunteered to be killed, and basically there were hideous deformities because of radiation, which come from uranium deposits. Unclear whether this is. There were rumors that their uranium impurities came from the NATO bombing in 1999 of Serbia. So we have these radioactive cows which lit up. We have the peasant wants himself to be killed because it's the only way his family get money so that his granddaughter, who's deformed because of the radiation, can get surgery to make her better. It's quite wrenching and disturbing, and gets more and more horrific as it goes on. Even though, in other words, they've basically been corrupted by the German proposition, even though they took it under duress. So what eventually happens is that they break up. People, the sort of countercultural people, and you have former porn stars who are gay and HIV positive. You have junkies. You have all these other. You have a young man, like 20-year-old guy, who they pick up because he's a transvestite, and so his father's always beating him up, so he needs to escape. And they all come. Eventually they all kind of, everything breaks down. This kind of utopian community of outsiders is destroyed by the fact that they took on this snuff thing that they're in the end killing instead of fucking, basically. And eventually, one by one, the group breaks apart and they all separately go to kind of horrific fates. Eventually, Marco, the director, goes back to Belgrade, where he kills the porno guy, the porno guy's cop brother, and finally the German who set them up with this. And then he and his girlfriend, who was a member of the troupe, basically kill themselves. So that's the last scene is actually kind of peaceful. They go to these Roman ruins somewhere in Serbia and slash their wrists and kill themselves. And the film sort of becomes, in a weird way, idyllic in a way. So it's kind of, again, it's a kind of allegory of a society which is between kind of capitalist exploitation on one hand and patriarchal conservatism on the other hand, is in desperate straits. It's telling that Marco, the young director, misses the overthrow of Milosevic in 1999 because he's on the run from the Corner King. So when the big political events happen, he's in hiding and doesn't take part in them. And then in the aftermath, society, despite the fact that they've gotten rid of the tyrant Milosevic, society isn't really better because they find themselves in this nightmare world of patriarchal conformity on one hand and the pressures of money on the other hand. And so the film, again, is very dark and very stark, and again, it's hard to watch because of all the stuff they present explicitly, but there's a way in which I think I want to argue, and this is the part which I haven't really written yet, and which is hard, is that there's a certain sense, I won't say of transcendence or redemption, but of something, if only a kind of pause or something like that, which has something to do with how the deaths of the members of the troupe and their own suicide, the two remaining members' suicide at the end is treated. And so that's what I'm interested in working further on. And I should have had one more slide, which I haven't put in yet, but my conclusion to the whole project is